Hello and welcome to TinkerSpace. My name is Brandon. I am a Learning Lab Specialist with the Gwinnett County Public Library, and today we will be learning the basics of soldering. Before we begin, we will need a few items. First, we will need a soldering iron kit, a stand with a damp sponge, a spool of lead-free solder, a pair of cutting pliers, a spool of jumper wire, a set of safety glasses, a practice soldering board, a pair of helping hands, and some tip tinner. Now that we have our supplies, it is advised that you organize your workspace and are aware of any potential risks. Remove any flammable objects, as the iron we are using is capable of lighting paper on fire and burning your skin. Be aware of your iron's location and status at all times. Remove any sharp objects or potential hazards, and make sure that the cables are free to move and will not snag, as this could result in the iron being caught and potentially burning you or your immediate area. When turning your iron on, adjust to the necessary temperature or dial and wait a few moments. To test if it is ready, I suggest tapping it onto your damp sponge. If you hear a strong sizzle, that means it is adequately heated. As we are dealing with extremely high temperatures and fumes, it is strongly encouraged to always wear PPE, such as protective eyewear and facial mask coverings. In addition to this, it is also recommended that you have a burn or injury plan before, such as easy access to burn gel, as this is much more difficult to think of in the moment. The first thing we will do is clean and prepare our hot iron by dipping it into the tip tinner and then brushing off the excess onto the damp sponge. This will leave behind a thin layer of solder on our iron. It is important to know that soldering is a process of heat transfer. This allows us to create electronic and mechanical connections. Solder does not like to go to cold metal. So with our cleaned and prepared iron, we will touch the component and wait a few seconds for it to heat up. Once we see that it is heated up, we can begin applying the solder to the iron, and you will see that the solder will flow into the hole. By pre-coating our iron in solder, we are able to decrease the time that it takes to heat up the metal. This process, known as tinning, is important to do before and after each use of your iron, as it will help maintain the integrity and the heat transfer qualities of your iron's tip. When you're soldering a lead to your board, you want to ensure that the connection is solid throughout the entire slot. If you see more solder on the top than you do on the bottom, you may have what is known as a cold solder joint. This can occur if the metal is not evenly heated or not enough came through to attach. It is fixed by resoldering the point and adding more solder. It is also important to note that while reheating the component, you do not hold it on for too long, as this may damage or burn the board. The next thing we will do is go over how to prepare and tin a jumper wire for soldering. Tinning will prepare your components to quickly transfer heat between themselves and the iron. It is helpful to tin any leads or flat pieces on your board that you are soldering, as this will cut down the time that you are actively holding heat to the board. To tin this wire, I have taken the exposed end and clamped it to the helping hand's arm so it can be stable as I hold the soldering iron to the wires. Now that it is clamped and secure, I can begin applying heat by touching the iron to the wires at the bottom. This will take slightly more time than before, as this is heating the entirety of the metal wire, so please be careful and do not touch. After a few seconds, you will see that the solder is beginning to melt, and at this point we can brush our iron and the solder along the wire and evenly coat and distribute throughout. If a few spots are missing when we are tinning this wire, we can just reheat it with our iron, and once it gets molten again, we can just paint it until it is fully coated. Now that we have tinned our wires, we can attach it to either side of the helping hands and make the tinned components in the middle overlap. As we saw when we were tinning our wire, this may take a few more seconds as it heats the metal throughout the entire length of the wire. So once again, please be careful and do not touch any part of the wire. Once we begin to see that the solder is melting and the wire is heated up, we can repeat the same process from tinning. Move the iron and the solder along the length of the wire to coat them and fuse these two wires together and form one strong joint. When you are finished soldering, it is recommended that you clean the tip one more time and tin it before placing it back into the stand. This helps maintain the tip's quality and allows it to cool naturally. The damp sponge is again a useful trick to tell if it is hot or not. Thank you for watching today. If you'd like to learn more about soldering, tinkering, or other topics, please check out the Gwinnett County Public Library Learning Labs.